I think things are becoming clearer. What is clear is when it looked like the rebels were on the march, the Russians ran for the hills and left pretty quickly in a hurry, um, and so did the Iranians, and that really precipitated the fall of the Syrian army, who didn't fight; they just ran away because these their trainers and experts ran away too. It's pretty clear that the Russians have moved virtually all of their ships, if not all of their ships, from Tartus, and it's pretty clear they moved most of their aircraft and put Assad on one of them and took him away. So I think, and people might remember the Russians cleared their embassy a few days before Damascus fell, and I would be very surprised if there are any Russians left in Syria. As far as their bases are concerned, um, you know, that they have obviously been bombed, may well have been bombed and damaged by the Israelis who have been taken out, Syrian ships and aircraft. There are pictures of rebels and other Syrian civilians now occupying those Russian bases. Whether the Russians again get anything back from them, but I think generally the Russians ran, and it's been a humiliation for Putin and the Russians, an absolute humiliation. This was Putin's southern flank, so important to him, his only warm water port in the whole of Russia, as it were. So it's a massive defeat. I mean, it really is Putin's Waterloo, if you like. And those of us who've been so heavily involved in Ukraine as well hope that it will have a knock-on effect in Ukraine too. But yeah, I don't think we should underestimate this. This was a Russian defeat as much as it was an Assad defeat.
When you say you hope it will have a knock on effect in Ukraine, how do you see that? How could it have one?
Well, I think there are a number of things. It's first of all, it's been very clear that Putin has not been able to operate on two fronts, and the way that the Russians do their command and control. And what I mean there is, how the Russian generals direct warfare has been completely exposed, because actually Putin is virtually the person who has to, sign off every bit of military activity, and that is incredibly laborious and very, very slow. I think psychologically, it's shown to the world and hopefully the Ukrainians that these Russians, are not invincible. And Putin invested so much resources in Syria and so much, personal resources that again, it'll be a blow to him. And even the Russian press are now admitting this is a shocking defeat for Russia. And as soon as the Russian press and and the glitterati, if you like, in Moscow start questioning their leader and start questioning Putin, then I think things could go very quickly bad for him. Let's not forget it was the mothers of Russia who convinced the Kremlin to withdraw from Afghanistan in the 1980s when 17,000 Russian soldiers were killed. Again, probably not accidentally this week, the British government have announced the Russians have suffered 700,000 casualties in Ukraine. So I think lots of things are building up against Russia. This is a death by 1,000 cuts might not be quite the right analogy, but it's that sort of idea, because we already knew that when President Trump comes in a few weeks' time, and we're expecting him to enforce a peace, Putin has invested so much time and effort to try and retake Kursk, which the Ukrainians took a few months ago, and he's failed to do that. So I think the momentum is very much against Putin, and in warfare, even maybe to use a sporting analogy, once you lose momentum, it really multiplies itself, and I think that although we're unlikely to see the Russian pack of cards fall quite as dramatically and quickly as the Assad pack of cards did, given the right push by the international community, particularly the Americans and ourselves and other NATO countries, it could put Putin in a really difficult position when Trump comes into power. And even Putin knows that Trump really holds the key cards here, the ace. So it gives me hope and confidence that actually we might get a reasonable solution for the people of Ukraine, perhaps sooner rather than later.
Israel has also been carrying out bombing raids on Syria on its chemical weapons stockpiles. And you mentioned your work earlier. I mean, what do we know about exactly how big those stockpiles are and what they're made up of?
Well, I think in public we probably don't know very much. People will remember that the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons went into Syria in 2013 and 2014 and removed and destroyed Assad's declared stockpile of about 1,500 tons of chemical weapons and chemical precursors. But myself and a few others who probably knew a bit more than most about this at the time said that that was woefully short, and he had probably kept back a half or perhaps two-thirds of his chemical weapons stockpile. In subsequent years, in 2017, 2018, the British and Americans bombed his chemical weapons facilities, but did not destroy them all. It's probably, when Assad fell the other day, there were probably a few hundred tons of chemical weapons in various sites across Syria. Israel has been bombing them, and I think, I think the UK and the US has. I think they are relatively positive about that being done. It's not the ideal way to destroy chemical weapons, but it's probably the least worst at the moment until the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons can actually get to these sites and verify they're destroyed or destroy them themselves. So bottom line is there was probably a lot of chemical weapons left, and the absolute last thing that anybody wanted is for those chemical weapons to fall into ISIS hands. At the moment, it's a good thing to do. I think I mentioned earlier, it really concerns me when journalists ring me up who are just about to go and visit these chemical weapons sites after they've been bombed. And I'll reiterate, as I've done on social media, you need to be really careful about going around these sites.
Because I was going to say to you, you said that this is bombing is not the best way to dispose of these chemical weapons. I mean, to a lay person, it sounds like it's hugely risky. Can you literally just bomb chemical weapons out of being effective or out of existence without there being some kind of real public danger in the area?
It's not ideal. Absolutely. In the ideal world, you'd go in, you'd bag them all up, you'd take them away, and you'd put them in a big incinerator somewhere. But we're far from a perfect world. Actually, blowing them up does destroy them. Blowing them up, setting them on fire. In effect, when we destroy them at somewhere like Porton Down, we put them in an incinerator and burn them. So it is effective. However, the collateral damage, anybody in the vicinity of that plant is potentially going to get harmed. Contamination is probably less of an issue than people would think, because even if there is a residue left, this stuff it's not a vapor as such. It doesn't fly away on the wind. It would gather in pools, if you like. So the contamination threat is probably fairly small. It's not what you would do if you had the perfect situation, but in the lack of that, it's probably the next best thing to do.
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot. If you'd like to be the first to get exclusive content, you can sign up for membership with the link below. You can also listen to Times Radio for the latest news or read it on thetimes.com. My thanks to our producer today, Louis Sykes, and to you for watching. Bye for now.